Hi, my name is Steeves, and this is my author discussion on The Intuitionist by Colson Whitehead. So to start, let me get this there. So to start, I want to give a little background about Colson Whitehead, so you know a little bit about who he is. He was born on November 6th in 1969. He was raised in Manhattan, now living in New York. He graduated from Harvard College and had some pretty famous works such as The Underground Railroad, Zone 1, The Intuitionist, and The Colossus of New York City. And from these books, he was recipient of many awards, including the Pulitzer Prize, National Book Award, and Carnegie Medal for Fiction. And he was a #1 New York Times bestseller for Underground Railroad for several years. And he's taught at countless colleges and universities across the country. So just a couple of interesting facts about him. These are actually kind of abstract, not just the run-of-the-mill ones. So he got the idea for The Intuitionist after he got rejected for his first attempt at a book, and he read a report on the hidden dangers of escalators, and it sparked the idea for The Intuitionist and the elevator theme. And some of his childhood influences from literature were The Twilight Zone, Arthur C. Clarke, John Carpenter, Stephen King, Le Guin, and Lovecraft. Mostly Stephen King. A lot of his books now reflect on the kind of sci-fi steps Stephen King gave. And so when Whitehead writes a book, it takes up to a year and a half breaks between the start of a project and the end of one. So when he finishes a project, he can go up to a year and a half without doing anything towards creating a new one. And when he does work, he only makes about 1 to 3 pages per day. So books are pretty slow going, but it also shows he takes a lot of time. And he actually gave a lecture here at the University of Arizona on October 18th. I was looking up to see it. It was about racism and fraternity life across the United States. And it was very interesting to see him live after taking a class about him. And so a little outline about The Intuitionist, a brief summary, because this isn't about summarizing the book. Leela May, she lives in a society where elevators are basically the grounds for life and social hierarchy. Being an intuitionist or empiricist are very well-respected jobs. All of society revolves around elevators, basically. So the intuitionists and the empiricists. Intuitionists basically inspect elevators through a sixth sense. They ride them and can tell through the vibration and motion of the elevator whether it's healthy or not. And I go back to it, healthy, in quote, because they treat elevators as almost living creatures. And the empiricists are basically the elevator inspectors we have today. They just do normal manual inspections. And a recent elevator that May inspected ends up failing and has an accident. She believes it is sabotaged, and she believes this because there is an upcoming election between the intuitionists and empiricists. Candidates are both running for the same position, and she believes this is a good reason for sabotage. If the intuitionists have an accident right before an election, it kind of discredits them and gives the edge to the empiricists. And so the founder of Intuitionism, who is James Fulton, teases a new elevator called the Black Box that surpasses human limitations. It is revolved around the elevator instead of the passenger. And later on, May finds that Fulton is of mixed race. She feels the immediate connection. The man who is the father of Intuitionism and such a huge role in everyone's life is actually a mixed race. And it kind of flips the book around and changes her perspective. And she also finds that there was no sabotage in the end, and there was also no black box. So it was all kind of a hoax. And she was chasing fake leads, but it ended up putting her in a better place than she started. So that's what I'm going to analyze. Kind of keep it interesting. I was going to go over some of the book covers. This one were pretty cool. 2, just elevators in general, what they represent. 3, the black box. 4, Leela May and Pompeii, and then James Fulton at the end. And at the very end, I have a picture I drew that kind of sums up what I took from the book and its meanings and themes. So here are the 3 main covers for The Intuitionist. The first one is pretty cool. I like these tan colored dots because they kind of look like A, the numbers or the buttons you press to change floors, or B, the kind of light array where you would see like the up arrow here. So it kind of got a double meaning for elevators. And then here you have the kind of dark, very concrete style buildings, kind of like a futuristic sci-fi feel to it, based off of Stephen King. And then I'm not really sure what to make of the green background. I think it just looks cool. The second cover is also kind of like not necessarily gloomy, but eerie and foggy. It still has that same sci-fi feel. Very stark black and white contrast, which is one of the major themes of this book, is the racial separation between blacks and whites. And I like how they have kind of a black box here around the title. Obviously, black box is a huge part of the story, and they have a little one right there. The third cover, this one also has a pretty stark black and white contrast. It has a little bit of yellow in it. Just give it some zealous or some zeal or whatever. It also has multiple levels, like the book has multiple levels to it, and obviously like elevators have multiple stops. And there's an elevator at the highest point and the lowest point, signifying that every aspect of life and every hierarchy and every class uses elevators. They're involved in everyone's life, and I think that is pretty neat that they included that in the cover. So talking about elevators. So elevators kind of symbolize the rise in social standing. They take you higher in your pursuit, and they also have a lot of limiting factors that kind of relate to real life limiting factors. So some elevators you need special access to reach certain heights. I think that's kind of the same in real life. You know, not many people can just ride up to the top 1%. You need special help or special access to get there. A lot of people will never be able to reach there on their own, but some are able to. It's not all defining, but at the same time, you do need special access to get to certain levels sometimes, and that is pretty true with real life too. And then the wealthy have higher buildings. They can reach higher levels. The poor tend to have shorter buildings, more run down. The elevators can't go as high. And while they can both reach the height of their buildings, they can never reach the height of another's building, which is also kind of a resemblance of real life. Now the black box. So the black box is basically the ideal elevator that can't ever be reached, I don't think. It's almost like a living, breathing creature, the way James Fulton describes it. But I really like the concept of the black box, because it's something that everyone wants to achieve. All the companies want to build it. All the people want to have it. And I like it. I think it's ironic that it's called the black box, where in this time setting, in the story, the black people were very not oppressed, and looked down on. They obviously were not held to the same regards as other races, and I think it's ironic that it is called the black box. Fulton also talks about the gloom of the shaft, which is basically his way of referencing darkness that is held within everyone, and all living things, and he thinks his black box can basically take that away, because the black box, from what he describes it as, surpasses human limitations, that it is revolving around the elevator rather than the occupant, and so it looks past whoever the occupant is, whether they're black, white, Hispanic, tall, short, fat. It looks past that, and it just operates as an elevator rather than occupant based. I think it's also metaphorical of like a new relationship between humans. Like I was just saying, the black box is designed in the elevators. It has no cognition of physical features of the people. It is all designed around the elevator. So Leela May and Pompey, these are the Pompey is Leela May's only African American friend in the story. They're both African American, and May is kind of fearless and brave, breaking the typical stereotype of her time, which is set in the 50s. And Pompey is obedient, doing what he thinks is the best for his family and his career. And so May's intentions are personal. She's seeking the best for herself. When she was wrong, she does everything she can to correct it. And Pompey does not do the same. He kind of does what he's told just because he thinks it's the best for his family. And I think it's a comparison between, I like this idea, that it is similar to the black box in a normal elevator, where Leela May is the black box and Pompey is a normal elevator. May has qualities that are desired regardless of race. Same with the black box. Everyone wants it, no matter what like no matter what's holding it back. And I think May's qualities are similar, where everyone wants those kind of qualities that May has. She's brave, fearless, dedicated. And then Pompey kind of conforms to a situation rather than himself. Like, he does what he thinks is best for his family. He's just going to suck it up and eat it rather than stick up for himself. And I think that's kind of the idea of the normal elevator, is it conforms to the people rather than to himself, which is what Fulton was saying the black box doesn't do, is it conforms to the elevator rather than the people. So James Fulton, we find out late in the book that he is actually mixed, but he hid it the entire book and his whole life because people would disregard him if he came out that he was mixed. He is the founder of Intuitionism, or the father, and I think it's kind of ironic that everyone chases what he has and what he's creating, even the highest social tiers, but little do they know he was mixed and is part of the, quote, lowest tier at the time, and I think that irony is pretty profound. It also provides a double-edged sword, so anything you hear about Fulton from the beginning of the story kind of has a different meaning when you figure out that he isn't straight, white, or whatever connotation you had of him before. So for example, when he talks about the curse of the race, before it's revealed that he is mixed race, it could mean that he's talking about the human race or any non-white race, or just being upright racist. But after you realize that he is mixed, that quote kind of takes a different connotation. So it could be talking about like the racial profiles that make him hide who he really is. Like, he has to hide out, and people would discredit him if they knew what race he was, and that could be the curse of the race he's talking about. But you don't really realize that until after he comes, after it's revealed that he's African American partly. So here's my drawing. It's modest, it's great, I know. Young Picasso. So this is the Empire State Building because the book takes place in New York, and the Empire State Building is one of the most prominent buildings in New York. So in the picture, I have Lela Mae hanging onto the bottom of the elevator as it shoots towards the top. Standing inside is just some generic white man. And so the representation of this is supposed to be that the white man basically exerts no effort. He gets in the elevator and rides to the top. He climbs that social ladder. But someone like May has to hold on and struggle to reach that same level. It's not as easy for them to do it, but they can still do it. They're both going towards the black box. It's what everyone wants, but the black box is unattainable. You can't get there. It's walled off inside the top of the Empire State Building. It's not something that they can feasibly get. So everyone's racing towards something that isn't real, or they can never really get to. And Lela Mae, since she's had to work her way up this far, she can work her way towards it. At the end of the book, Lela Mae is researching to try and complete Fulton's work of creating the black box, but everyone else just kind of gives up. And that's partly because they've had it so easy, they can just take it to the top, but Lela Mae has to work her way up. And that is my presentation on The Intuitionist by Colson Whitehead. Thank you for listening.